Musical Talk, the UK's independent musical theatre podcast. Hello and welcome to another edition of Musical Talk. I'm Thos Ribbits, and I've been wondering if the 1968 film musical Les Bicyclettes de Belsize, featuring as it does both bicycles and bicycle bells, might be better off being called a ring cycle. Well, I think we'll very quickly brush that aside and move on to the bread and butter of today. It does not feature a ring, but it does feature a circle. A series of circles, in fact. Because the show we're going to be talking about today is the live version of Colour Inside the Lines. And if that show title sounds familiar to you, I'm delighted, because it's a show that we've spoken about before here on Musical Talk, actually in episode 757, in an episode entitled The Many Colours of Colour Inside the Lines. And the show itself is a one-person musical by the amazing Jenny Stafford, who wrote it, but of course also performed it, and which played the Denver Fringe Festival, where it won Best Solo Show, was featured as part of the online Edinburgh Festival Fringe in 2021. That, of course, was in the middle of COVID, and it was then that myself and Mike Shapiro watched the video recording and praised it to the skies because it's a great musical. And then I had the amazing pleasure of seeing it live at the Edinburgh Festival Fringe in 2022, after which I had the opportunity to speak to Jenny about the show. So, rather wonderfully here on Musical Talk, we've got the opportunity today to hear from the creator of a show which Musical Talk has already said was absolutely fabulous. But what's it about? Well, let's read the description of the show that you can find on Jenny's own website. That's jennystafford.net. Colour Inside the Lines. A palm-reading drag queen tells Jenny she'll never find love, sending her mind reeling back to high school and a matchmaking scheme that went horribly wrong. After hopefully filling in the bubbles of a Scantron, envisaging her perfect match, she is paired with the biggest loser in school. Was this whole matching system just a cruel hoax by the popular kids, sitting around in someone's dad's hot tub laughing at the losers as they paired them up? Maybe, but years later she wonders, what if it was her perfect match? Questions about love, destiny, erasure and memories collide in this comical and surprisingly touching story of growth, acceptance and the expansiveness of love. And that, I think, is an absolutely fair description of the show. We at Musical Talk loved it. I loved seeing it in its virtual form and I loved seeing it again live. And we gave it 5 stars. But it was also recognised as being rather brilliant by a lot of other people. The British Theatre Guide said it was a poignant play full of recognisable situations and with plenty of dry humour. And Rachel Louise Martin from West End Best Friend called it an emotional, compelling and comic piece. And I don't think I can add any more to that except to say it was a cracking show, and I'm really delighted that we're going to have an opportunity now to hear that conversation that I held live in person with Jenny at the Edinburgh Festival Fringe in 2022 after seeing the live performance of Colour Inside the Lines. And even better than that, before and after that interview, you'll be able to hear 2 songs from the score of this magnificent show, where the book, music and lyrics are by Jenny Stafford. After the interview, you will hear the song Colour Inside the Lines. But to get us into the interview, let's hear the wonderful song Home of the Losers.
Is that even here, in the home of the losers, there is a hierarchy. At the top you have your Shawns and Kellys playing all the leading roles. They're kind of hot, but just for theater. Watch as they achieve your goals. Your Cinderellas and your princes, presidents of drama club. You want to hate them, but you also want to be them. That's the rub. 'Cause they're the top of the home of the losers. Come and join me in the middle. We have skills, we're always cast, but always as the mom or friend, 'cause we look old or tall or fat. In drama club, I'm secretary. That role fits me like a glove. We play the parts that reinforce that we are never finding love. In the middle of the home of the losers. See, in high school, it's very important to know who's inferior. Because when you're a loser, God, it's nice to feel superior. Even if you're playing Sister Margareta and not Mother Superior. It's fine. It's been 20 years. I'm not bitter. Yes, I am. There's ensemble. They can't really sing or dance, and maybe they could play the lead, but do you want to take the chance? No. Still, they're like in each production. They are staples in the show. Is that one Becky or Melissa? Oh, it's Michael? God, who knows? Because they're the bottom of the home of the losers. Welcome to the home of the losers. Now you're in the home of the losers.
My name is Jenny Stafford, and I'm here at the Edinburgh Fringe with the show Color Inside the Lines, which I wrote the script and the lyrics and the music for, and I also perform.
So I would suggest that you have quite a connection with this piece.
I would say, yeah, I'd say I'm pretty closely connected with it.
Now, I must declare my cards, because this was available last year for the virtual Ed Fringe.
Yes.
Because I think you took it to the Denver Fringe.
We did.
Where it won all manner of awards. It was available in its video format last year because 2021 was not a happy year in the world for COVID. Mm-hmm. And so whilst there was an Edinburgh Fringe, it was very reduced and video was very much the way forward. So Musical Talk spent a lot of time watching the musical theatre offerings online. And we watched your show. And we loved your show.
I listened to your episode about it. And oh my gosh, I was so thrilled by it and so touched by it that you had watched it and spent that much time analyzing it, and it was just very gratifying to hear people who know what they're talking about understand what you were trying to do. I was very moved by it.
Oh, well, thank you. I wasn't fishing for a compliment at all. I was hoping to offer you one. And I can also say that my fellow presenter in that episode, Mike Shapiro, who's here in Edinburgh, wanted me to pass on his compliments to you because he enjoyed the show so very much, as did I. So I think we're coming from a place of love on this. But for those people who haven't yet had a chance to see it either in its recorded form, which is no longer available, I believe, or at least at the moment, but in its live form, which very much is, just briefly explain, without spoilers, what the show's about.
Sure. It follows the true story of when I was in high school and I took sort of a love quiz to try to find my soulmate and ended up getting paired with the biggest loser in school. And then years and years and years later, looking back and wondering, was that my soulmate, and did I miss out on my person because I was too proud or not willing to move outside of my own social circles, or afraid of what other people thought of me.
I think that's an admirable elision of the story, because there's so much more to it than that, but you're right, that is the fundamental storyline. Now, how did it come to be?
This was actually, I had written a solo show for the Edinburgh Fringe in 2020. And I don't generally write solo shows. That was the first one I'd ever done. But Penny Cole, who is the director and producer of Flying Solo Presents, was a director that I'd worked with a lot. And she reached out to me in 2020 and said, hey, they're doing this online Fringe. Do you want to try to write something for it? And I was just so desperate to do any kind of theater. Everything was shut down. Everything that I had planned for the year was gone now. And I had sort of this collection of essays that I'd been working on, because deep down I think I just want to be David Sedaris when I grow up. And so I took all of these essays and turned them into a solo show that we did in the 2020 Fringe. And then she said, well, do you want to do one for 2021? And we'll try to actually take it there then in 2022. So that was sort of the start of it, and I was trying to think about what story do I want to tell, and I had kind of these two stories that had been just bouncing around in my brain for 20 years, and one was the story of this drag queen who had read my poem in Chicago and told me that I would never find love.
Which is your opening number.
Which is the opening number.
Terribly striking.
And then the other one was this story of this guy from high school that had just, this situation had really never let go of my mind and of my heart, and I kind of always knew that I think I want to do something with this, but I don't know what, and it ended up turning into this show as I was creating it.
I think it's really interesting that the idea had lurked in your mind, in your personal life as it were, that there was this sort of unresolved, just background noise almost.
Yeah.
And we've all got those. That's the interesting thing. I mean, I'm going to say your show is very relatable. Obviously, the specifics are particular to you, but there are, the might have beens, the what ifs, the unfinished business in everybody's lives that, just sort of floats around a little bit like flotsam and jetsam at the back of the memory.
Yeah.
And every now and then reasserts itself, and you just think, oh yes, I wonder, that thing that was last time I thought about this was 10 years ago and is now 15 years ago, and where's time going as well?
Exactly.
To look back is merely to catapult us back into the future, I always think. But it's a terribly relatable show. But I'm delighted to hear. Well, this is an odd word to use, I think. Delighted to hear in the sense that it comes from a place of truth. As much good drama should. No, obviously not all good drama, but I'm not sure Shakespeare was ever a Scottish king.
Sure.
Who must never be mentioned, except he's got 3 musicals in Edinburgh this year, Macbeth.
I know. He's everywhere.
He's all over the place. Yes, he's never been so popular. But but it's interesting to me that it comes from this place of truth, and that truthfulness and that sincerity comes through. And I'd like to talk about sincerity a little bit later in the show, because actually there are some interesting things that you do with that. But so you had this idea, and then you had the catalyst, which was, can you put on a show? But there's a world of difference between saying, let's put on a show, Andy Hardy, and doing it.
Yes.
So how did you approach it? But I suppose that year beforehand has been a helpful training ground for how to do a one-person show.
It was a little bit, except it was so different because when I did that one in 2020, I had so many existing essays that I sort of then was just shaping into a narrative.
You were a curator of your own work, as
right?
It were. Yes.
And this one was sort of starting from scratch on a full story. And I would say I've written a lot of shows, and this is probably the most difficult artistic process I've ever had in creating something. I think partly because I was trying to write it as a play for a very, very, very long time, and I was just banging my head against the wall. And I was like, why can't I crack this story? Why can't I figure this out? And I was sitting at my computer one day, and I was like, well, this next part of it, there's no way to do it slowly enough. There's no way to make it land the way I want it to and elevate it. And I was like, unless it's a song. I was like, maybe it's a song. And then all of a sudden I was like, maybe this whole show is a musical. And that was the thing that sort of cracked it open.
Can I say hurrah for musicals? But I would say that.
Yes. But yeah, because I was like, why can't I figure out this story? I was so frustrated. And then I had watched The Lion. Do you know that musical?
I don't, as it happens.
Oh, it's wonderful. It's a one-man musical by Ben Shurer about his life. And that was very inspirational to me, too. And just seeing what are ways that you can structure a one-person musical? Because it's so different than structuring a traditional musical.
Oh, crikey, yes, absolutely.
Yes.
But also that's frightening and challenging, but also freeing. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's a level playing field. You can almost do what you like.
Yeah.
It is interesting. I think you've made such an interesting point there, but actually, the format of a musical, in all its, in the broadest sense of what that means, can be a way of leveraging some form of drama which isn't available in other formats, I suppose.
Right.
That's a bland way and a reductive way of putting it, but you're right, you can be reflective in a song. Mm-hmm. And it's everyone says how ridiculous it is. No, not everyone. A lot of people say, I don't like musicals because suddenly people stop and talk about their innermost feelings and no one else can hear them. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that's exactly the method that you need to get something out there.
Sometimes that's what you need.
It is.
And so often the music can do a lot of that emotional work for you. There are things that's I would like to communicate this, and there's not a word for this, but there is a guitar figure for this, and that will help me do it.
Well, it's Sondheim who says content dictates form,
yes.
And you had worked out that your content needed this form in order to be most expressive.
Absolutely.
But having made the decision that you're going to write a musical, there's something called a song, and a song, not everyone can write them. Now, you can write your own songs, obviously, but is that revelation that obviously excited you at one level because it unlocked the case, but also it means further challenges. So once you've had that revelation, what was your immediate response to it?
Well, the thing that's interesting is this is actually the first piece that I've written music for.
Oh, really?
I generally write book and lyrics when I work on musicals, and I work with composers. And I've had for years and years all the composers that I've worked with been like, you're a composer, you could compose. And I'm like, no, I can't. I'm not really a composer. I can come up with tunes and whatever. And once I realized that this show was a musical, I knew that it was so deeply personal that I was like, I would like to try that. I would like to scare myself and see if I can do that composition part of it as well.
It's your music, and I mean that in the figurative sense.
Yeah.
I don't just mean you've written the music. I mean, it is the outpouring of who you are.
Absolutely.
And your experiences.
Yeah.
That's also a really important thing. This is, of course, it's ultimately a product, but it's a very reflective product. It's a very revealing product. And actually, intimate shows, the joy of Edinburgh is the intimacy so often. In a smallish venue with a crowd that isn't too, everyone wants to have a large crowd, but on the other hand, you want a crowd which is the right size for the show.
Yes.
Because this show really needs its room to breathe, because it is in the breathing that we see the living, as you would with a human.
Yes.
So you've decided that you were going to compose your own music, and and it turns out all your composer friends were right. Because you can. These songs sit very easily on the ear, and I don't mean that as a flip kind of light throwaway. I mean, actually, that's deceptively clever. Yeah. A song should almost feel really easy. It's the old perspiration, inspiration point, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, yes, quite. So how then did you start to structure the piece? Where did you realise that this point needed a song, but the revelation that more songs were going to be needed? How do you pick your nexus points?
Mostly, and I will say I was very excited to hear on your podcast that the discussion you had about is this a musical or is this not a musical, and very happy that you landed on it is a musical because the songs advance the story and advance the plot.
They do.
And that was what I was going for, so I was thrilled to hear that.
It'd be hard to take them out and hear Frank Sinatra's version, let's put it that way. Although,
yes.
if you were available, I'd love to hear it. Actually,
I'd take him.
Yes.
If he wants to sing,
I'll buy that album. But you're right, it's not I interviewed someone else years ago who just said, yes, I loved old musicals. He's a very nice chap, but he goes, I loved old musicals, but of course the plot always took place, and then they'd stop and then sing My Gal Sal and then move on. That was Julian Fellows, who's mostly responsible for writing Downton Abbey, who we interviewed once before. So I'm name dropping terribly, so please ignore me.
Well, he's had a lot of success, so he can have his opinion.
And he knows his musicals, actually.
Yeah.
Yes. So we were talking, therefore, about these songs and the nexus points. So
then it was sort of going through and figuring out which of these parts of the story would be most clearly communicated in song. And there were some that felt fairly obvious to me, the moment of seeing him in the wings of the high school and wondering is this the person that I should be with? Am I judging too quickly? That one felt very immediately like a song. I don't know if we want to do spoilers in this or not.
Well, I'd like to, but a little bit later perhaps.
Oh, great.
So let's just
then there's some other songs that after the spoiler moment that felt quite naturally like that. And then there were some that came a little bit later. The first song, the Home of the Losers, sort of explaining the hierarchy of the high school drama club, came a little bit later. It was I feel like we need some kind of introduction to the world kind of song. And the very first, the drag queen reading my palm, almost functions like an I Want song. Not 100%, but enough, I think, to sort of fill that space in a musical where it would normally be.
Am I going to get song?
Yes.
Or not? Yes, quite. But also, I've said it before, it's that really striking opening. When you're an audience member, you sit there, you come out on the stage, you sit on your circular stool, and you start with this preposterous line, but sort of lovably preposterous as well, because actually it absolutely could happen, here we are in Edinburgh. I bumped into more than my fair share of drag queens, and they're funny people in all the senses, but they are, they're easily believable as pseudo fortune tellers or, just for the fun of it, as it were. But it's such a good line. You hook us in right at the beginning, and then, of course, your storytelling is so humane.
Thank you.
Was it hard to keep a handle on the humanity, by which I mean, obviously the story is so much your story, it's a long history of your life in some senses. But when one is writing, one has to finesse slightly, one has to tidy things up just for coherence. Mm-hmm. And also you can find yourself going down a particular line thinking, oh, this is exciting, or where's this going to take me? And then you get to the end of that line, you've really enjoyed writing it or creating it, and you think, it's not actually germane to the plot, or this is self-indulgent, or, I'm not saying there's any of that in the show, but, but the writing process can take you in a lot of places. And the secret of writing, one of the secrets of writing well, is to be able to row back. Mm-hmm. Did you have any issues on that?
I would say really the biggest challenge with that is because this is a true story, and because so much of that story is about someone else who was a real person who lived, that I knew, that I would like to honor and elevate and honor his legacy. I would say a difficult, challenging part of this piece was figuring out how much of that is my story to tell and how much of that is not my story to tell. And knowing that, for all I know, like his family could see this show, people who care about him could see this show. And how do I talk about him and talk about this moment and talk about, what happened in the rest of his life in a way that doesn't overstep my bounds and is sensitive to him and to people who cared about him?
Well, from my vantage point, and obviously I have no connection with you or the character Michael, whom we're discussing, but I think you trod the line very delicately and just right.
Thank you.
As we said in a previous episode, there's a biographical fact, quite a significant one, which is factually out there, but the things relating to it, which natural curiosity makes one think about, because we're all human, and humans are good and bad, and in the middle, and curious beasts. But actually, you make the right decision on not revealing more than is necessary, I think. So I think it's tastefully done as well. I think, once again, though, it comes back to the word humane, because actually that is a humane consideration, which I suspect not all creators would necessarily have followed quite so tastefully.
I felt very fortunate. I worked with a dramaturg, Sarah Johnson, that I've worked with quite a few times. And that was a conversation that we had a lot, was how to handle this material, and sort of coming around to like that ultimately the story has to be about me, because I am able to tell my own story. I do have the agency to tell that. I don't have the agency to tell his story.
Yeah.
So it has to ultimately be about the intertwining of our stories and what did I learn from having interacted with him.
Where the paths take you and where they take you away and where they may take you again in other forms and places and times.
Yes.
Yes, it's human connections. There are some other shows up here in Edinburgh this year, I'm not going to name, where actually there's been quite a lot of manipulation, where a presumably genuine story has been revealed by the actor or actress, and it's that balance between truth and manipulation. You can reveal something in an aimed way, but you can also reveal something in a self-indulgent or greedy way, and I've seen it done, revelation followed by requirement for validation. And actually, I don't think there's any of that in your show. I hope you don't mind, I'm going to validate you, as if that were my place to do. But what I mean is the show is great, but it's so perfectly pitched. I didn't feel manipulated at all. And we will talk about a particular issue in a minute, which is going to be after our spoiler moment, or spoiler barrier. But so let's get back to the songs. Yeah. So I think they're beautiful. I think they do exactly what we've already discussed, that they push the story forward, but they're each individual and each interesting. Colour inside the lines and erase. I mean, it's the name of the show, so it's nice to know there is a song with that title. But it's a much more complex song than I think people think, because it's got moments where you have to speak and elaborate some of the detail within it, so it's part of a drama. Yes. It's not a song per se, it is a method by which the drama is pursued. It's a method by which the narrative is pushed. Yes. It just happens to be a song, but it's more than a song, it intertwines within. And also it goes off in different directions, so it's not a simple song, and yet it sounds like a simple song. So we're back to my original position, but that's craft. That's absolutely, in my opinion, that's craft.
Thank you.
Did you find the songs, it's sort of the same question again, but having identified where the songs were going to go and what they were going to be about and how they might do it, is it then easy to write a song for you, or is it actually the process of writing a song that helps you see how you're going to do it?
That's a great question, and I think it's both.
That's a great answer. Tell me why.
I think I generally go into a song sort of knowing, like, okay, here's what I want this song to accomplish, here's where I want it to start. By the end of it, here's where I want to have landed, and I have sort of a general idea of, like, probably what's going to happen in the middle and how we'll get there. And then sort of that process of making art where it reveals itself to you, where you're like, oh, I thought it was going to be this, but actually now that I'm into it, like, it might be funnier to take it this direction, or actually I think we're going to need more information over here. So I think a lot of the songs were like that, where I sort of started with an idea of what I thought it was going to be, and then they revealed themselves through the process of the writing. And I was really fortunate. Like I said, I don't always consider myself to be a composer, but I worked with my guitarist, Mark, who is also my fiancé.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
Was it the gentleman we saw on stage?
That's him.
Oh, you looked like a lovely couple already.
Oh, I thank you.
And he smiled a lot all the way through.
Oh, well, I pay him for that. But he's a really excellent guitarist and a really excellent musician. And so there were a lot of times when I was like, cool, I want it to sound like, you know, and he's like, oh yeah. And then he can make
Just
that
do
happen.
it.
And then he can like add his own little embellishments to it. So he was like a really wonderful arranger on this piece too. So a lot of the songs still felt collaborative in a way, even though I was writing the bulk of it.
But art is collaborative, or the best art is collaborative,
Yes,
isn't it?
absolutely.
But can I just take you back then, because you said something quite interesting. You were talking about, you know, the song itself sort of then explains itself to you almost.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit of planning, but a little bit of discovery. And the idea of art as a form of discovery is interesting, rather than, you know, because discovery is almost passive. Or rather, it's a different form of activity in the sense of, you know, when one thinks about writing a song and the creator creates the song, of course they do, but the idea of discovering the art in the process suggests there was something there already. That's the idea I like, the idea that actually there is, by tapping away at the keyboard or whatever, you will stumble across. I think, let's go back to Sullivan. You might discover the lost chord.
Right.
Yes. Or Jimmy Durante, if you know. Do you know he wrote a comic song in the 1930s called "The Man Who Found the Lost Chord"?
No, I'm going to have to find it.
Yes, well, it's a sequel to Sullivan, so there's an unexpected leap. And did you always envisage it actually as being a single guitar as your accompaniment?
I did, yeah.
Because that has a very particular feel.
Yeah, well, I think, like you said, the show is so intimate that I feel like if you had more than that, it would overpower the story, or it wouldn't feel balanced. There's something I like about how you have to like lean forward to hear an acoustic guitar almost, and I feel like it draws people in to because it's like we said, it's an intimate story, it's a small story, and I feel like having just that one guitar sort of sets up the tone that I wanted and like the relationship with the audience that I wanted.
It's gentle.
Yeah.
It doesn't overwhelm. Yes, if you decided to have the Salvation Army's brass band as your backing,
yes.
I mean, once again, I'd be jolly interested, but whether it would be successful
is
quite
a different feel.
Wouldn't it? It'd be much more robust in that sense. And actually the show isn't about that. It's not that form of robustness. There is clearly a strength. There's an inner strength and actually a personal strength. Yes, so that strength is, I think it's a really bonded piece, actually, and through bonding is strength, actually. I mean, I speak in cliches, as you can tell, but I think it's really thoughtful, not only in its content, but in its delivery. And once again, those are two different things. Have you experimented with delivering it in slightly? I mean, I don't think you'd come in with a megaphone and start shouting at us, but you know, have you? Because you have the opportunity over a run of performances, and you've done several now, of experimenting with the material yourself. Have you found new nuances in your own material, or have audiences tipped you off about some things that perhaps you hadn't realised were there? You know, sometimes jokes lurk unspotted by their author,
yes.
but not by their audiences, or sometimes vice versa. The audience lets you know that perhaps it's not the joke you thought.
Yeah, it's been amazing to get to do it so many times in a row and sort of repeat it so often. And I've definitely found myself relaxing into it a little bit, which is nice.
Yeah.
I think the first, several performances is just like, sort of jittery, and like a lot of your brain space is just going to like remembering what the next line is, because if you forget it, there's no one to help you. It's just you.
It's a brave job.
But yeah, it's been really interesting to hear audiences respond to it, and to hear, where the jokes work, where the moments where it's like, oh, maybe I could tighten this up if I were to do another draft of this. Seems like maybe people are like shifting a little bit, or like, so just kind of like getting that feedback and getting to get it so consistently has been really helpful.
And is it your aim to perform it the same way? This is a stupid question really, but is it your aim to perform it the same way all the time, or do you allow yourself to manoeuvre it slightly? I mean, it's all moving in the same direction, but tweaks and twiddles in performance. Yeah,
definitely tweaks and twiddles, just depending on, I think you sort of have to like honor yourself as like a human being also, and be
what
like,
mood am I in today?
Yeah, like today I've got loads of energy and I'm going to lean into that, and like today I'm like super tired and like maybe I'm going to like try to push through some of that, but also like honor some of that. and try to like make it feel authentic to where I am that day. And because it's my own story and my own words, I feel like I have sort of permission to do that.
Oh, you have license, I think. Yes,
yeah,
absolutely. Yes,
to be like, this is how I'm going to tell this story today, while also trying to make sure that like every audience gets a similar experience of it. That like a Monday audience doesn't see a totally different show than a Thursday audience.
Yes. So can I ask, what's the biggest thing you've been taught about your own show by your audiences?
What a great question.
Well, thank you.
I think it's been very validating to find out that sort of, I don't know, it's a very vulnerable show.
Yes.
And I tend to not be an incredibly vulnerable person like in my real life. And there's something that feels like a little more safe about doing it on stage. I don't know why.
Gosh, yeah, but that's the reverse of a lot of people's position, I think.
Right. But to find that sort of through being very vulnerable, you are able to connect with people in a way. It's like you said, that like it's so specifically my story, but there's that idea of like the specific is universal. And
Absolutely.
So by telling a very specific story, finding that like, oh, so many people actually resonate with this, or they had a Michael in their life, or they had a moment where they're like, man, I messed up and I did the wrong thing in my life at that moment, and I've been thinking about that for 20 years. You know, just to find that like, I don't know, that opening up process is a really beautiful way to connect with people.
Now, I want to talk to you a little bit about, and this is something I've discussed previously on Musical Talk, so you may have heard this already, but it appears to me that you've been very, very subtle by popping in a circular theme. And I think that you very cleverly inserted circles where people aren't seeing circles, but are seeing circles. So just to list them off, there's a Venn diagram, which we all know from school,
oh, yes.
With circles within circles, which of course is an interesting concept in its own right, and where they overlap. You know, it's a great visual. There is the full circle of your career, from adoration of a drama teacher to becoming a drama teacher. There's, I've got to ask you about the stool. It is a circular stool, and certainly they're rarer in this country. I don't know if they are in America, but they you know, a proper circular stool.
Yeah.
I saw it in the video. I saw it live.
Yeah.
And it was, rather than the ergonomically designed for the posterior
Right.
style. And you're wearing them today, by the way, circular earrings. And then there are sort of throwaway lines about. I noticed towards the end something I hadn't spotted previously, but there was something about the word round. Was mentioned as well. You know, so I think there are lots of thematic circularity in the whole piece, and of course the whole thing about the Scantron machine is that it's
Right.
filling the circles. You know, I think it's beautiful. Please tell me it's deliberate, and please tell me I'm not just making patterns where no patterns exist.
No, I think you're absolutely right.
Hooray! Thank you. You've made my day.
Yeah, and a lot of it I would say was not intentional in the writing, and sort of came through the rehearsal process. That, you know, finding those circles on the whiteboard was like, oh, that was a fun thing to discover, and the stool and like all of those things. So a lot of it was sort of the happy accidents of the creative process, being in the room with other artists.
Gathering through serendipity.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say the stool, like, I'm very sorry, the stool just happened to be the stool that was in our space that we were using. But now that you mentioned it, I'm like, well, that worked out great. That's another one of those like happy accidents of art, where it's like, now we've got this stool that like works and fits, and
it's thematically accurate.
It's thematically accurate.
I mean, that is a level of degree of excitement, I find. You know, I had to get the right furniture for the piece of show.
Absolutely.
Good, but I'm really delighted, and you know, it's and those are subtleties which are not important, but they are cohesive. They add to a picture. They're extra flavours, extra layers, and once again, it brings me back to craft. This is all about, you know, how much experience does an audience member want? And different audience members want different things. Some people just come in, let a show flow over them, and then wander out. But somebody once said to me that certainly in the concept of watching films, people are either audiences or directors, and an audience just lets it happen, and a director is trying to work out what's going on and how they might do it differently and what the ending's going to be. It doesn't just work for films. That's true for theatre. It's true for book reading. You know, it's whatever it is. Yeah. And there are other possible variants as well, but I think that an attentive audience member will get even more out of it just by being observant, not just observant with their eyes. You know, other senses are available. Thank you for that. Were there other thematic things which I missed? Because I'm sure there will be plenty of layers that I have yet to discover.
I was very glad that in your podcast you discussed the theme of erasing and the way that sort of changes meaning over the course of the show, from, just erasing outside the lines to keep everything very neat, to like erasing people that are just too awkward to have encounters with, or like people that you don't think are worth your time, to erasing people who have passed on and left your life and letting those people go or not letting those people go. So yeah, that was a very deliberate theme as well. And we've got a couple of erasers on stage. We've got an eraser on the pencil, and we've got the big eraser for the whiteboard.
Of course, yes.
So I'm trying to get those thematically, visually represented as well.
And yes, physical, and you've got a little jingle as well, haven't you? Boys,
yes.
I have erased.
Boys, I've erased.
Yes, right. If you like, the flotsam, the people who've fallen by the way over your life, quite often where you have been the severer of the relationship,
yes.
as it were, or perhaps the nascent relationship might be the nicest way of putting it. Yes, once again, that it's beautiful, and it's in the song, colour between the lines and erase. You show in a academic sense, you have done what they ask you to do in an exam, which is show you're working.
Yes.
I really like that. Can I ask you another question about your dramaturg?
Yeah.
Now, people often think of dramaturgs being principally about narrative bashing, for want of a better phrase. The shaping of the story, the shaping of the book, the finding of the detail, the focusing and the twiddling, the tweaking.
Yeah.
But what role does a dramaturg have in song development? And did your dramaturg have a role in song development, bearing in mind that songs are an element of the narrative overall?
Yeah.
Yet at the same time, they feel like an individually created thing. Because they're discrete. A song, even though it's important and integrated, is your product more pick-upable, if that makes sense, than the narrative, which is the road on which everything is being laid.
Sure.
He said mixing his metaphors terribly.
Yeah, well, I think it's probably different for every writer who works with a dramaturg, because that's such a personal and specific relationship. The one that I've worked with a lot, Sarah Johnson, the thing that I love about her is she does not ever come in trying to force you in a certain direction or dictate it. She's more about asking questions. She's like, it seems like this is what you're trying to accomplish here. Is that what you're trying to accomplish? And I can say yes, it is. And she's like, great, then that worked. I can say oh no, actually I wanted it to be this. She'll say, oh, because what I'm getting from it is this. And that's very helpful. But
a fresh pair of eyes approach, really.
Yes, absolutely.
Or ears. Or both.
Yeah, but also just to sort of constantly ask, to ask me, what are you trying to do? And here's what's actually coming across, which is
it's about focus,
very helpful,
isn't it? Yeah. So it's still your point, and it's still the thing that you would like to be focusing on, but it helps you actually tweak the lens on the camera to bring up the sharpness, I suppose.
Yeah, and the thing that's tricky is, as a writer, obviously I have so much more information about all of these moments than end up in the show. And so to me, it's of course everybody knows this because I know this. And just well, actually, that's not very clear the way that it's written now.
Because they haven't lived your life.
They haven't lived your life. They don't know that piece of information. So it's right, thank you, let me pull that in. And I think it was actually her idea to put in the Home of the Losers song. She's like, I think that would actually be a really great song moment to sort of establish what is, the world of this show. Who are these characters? What is the hierarchy that we're working in? So she was really helpful in that way as well.
It's good when one has when one can form a connection, and I suppose the real word is trust, with one's fellow collaborators.
Yes.
Because there will be people who are not simpatico, whose opinions are valid, but if the connection isn't there, or you don't quite trust them, or there are people who are very different, and
yes.
sometimes you just can't connect in some way. But I love the fact you've got this sort of supportive, helpful way of working with your collaborators. I mean, to the point where you're going to marry one of them. So right. That is collaborative.
That's pretty good collaboration.
Let us move on now to the spoiler point. So if people haven't seen the show in any of its forms yet and would hope to do so, and I hope they would, they might want to park this for the time being and then come back another time. However, let us tread intrepidly on. The thing I most want to discuss here is something about what you do in the middle. But actually, let's pick up the point you were talking about earlier when we were talking about song placing. And there was one you wanted to talk about, I think, that we parked for the spoiler moment. So we're now in that section.
Yeah, so there's a part of the story where, this character Michael that I was paired with and rejected him and did not ever talk to him and, sort of spent many, many years wondering, like, was that the person I was supposed to end up with? Did I miss out? I find out that he passed away in his mid-20s, which was sort of like a world-shaking thing for me, despite us not having been all that connected. And so when I found out that he passed away, I went looking for his obituary and trying to find out, he died so young, what happened, and I could not find any answers. And so that was one of the other songs that I knew right away I wanted to write, was the song of what happened to you and why aren't there any answers about where you went and what became of your life and why didn't anybody write anything down about you? Where are your people?
Where is the legacy and why is there a void? Yes, absolutely, yes. And a terribly touching song as well. And particularly in this day and age, by which I mean the last 20, 30 years, that's rarer and rarer because, you may not necessarily get your obituary in the copy of the Times, but someone on Twitter will mention it probably.
Right, it's somewhere.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. It's somewhere, that's the point. And the humanity of what you've done in this show, of course, is to amend that, which is beautiful as well. I'd like to discuss, if I may, the little section in the middle, where you do something I think which is very bold, very surprising, and you carry the day, because it's a very tricky line, and I'm going to have to say it out loud, so we are in the spoiler section, so I'm saying it.
Go for it.
You take us down a little fantasy path without us realising it's a little fantasy path until you reveal all. It doesn't go on too long, but you imagine what it would have been like, or rather, you tell us that you and Michael do, in fact, against the odds, link up later on and make a success of it in a relationship with children. I think you go as far as having 2 children, which you name. So, there's a lot of collaborative detail. And, we, the audience, are merrily taken down this little path. And then you say to us that actually this isn't what happened at all. And then you tell us what did happen. And I understand that by having done the first thing, you give power or greater power to the second part. Because, the almost idyllic projection is that rug is pulled away. Yeah. And then that's a shock for us. And I see also that it reflects the shock that you've just described in your own life when you discovered that Michael passed away. It's if you wait, it's like an aftershock tremor for us, the audience, from your own personal experiences. So I sort of understand the mechanistic way of the benefits of it. Yeah. But it is such a brave thing to do because it's a really, if not handled deftly, it can lose trust. And this show is about trust. You win us over through your sincerity, your humanity, and your humour right at the beginning, and punctuating all the way through. That's a really important thing, by the way. It's a marvellous way of greasing wheels. I think humour is for most people it's a real connection thing. Yeah. Keeps us in touch with you and you in touch with us. And of course you get a reaction from an audience when they're enjoying themselves and laughing, so it's a virtuous circle in a theatrical environment. But trust is always hanging on the line, and then you do this thing which would potentially destroy that, and it doesn't. I suppose I just want to explore that with you, and I don't quite have the words to push it into a question. I just think it's a really brave thing to have done. Did you worry over that?
I did, and I will say that I probably rewrote that part of the show 5 or 6 times.
Oh, right.
Trying to figure out how exactly do I do this? Because the thing that I wanted ultimately to do was make the audience experience what I experienced going through that, of sort of always wondering, before I knew that he had passed away, being maybe I missed him, and maybe we'll get together one day, and this could happen, and that could happen, and this could happen, and
all
that
the potentialities are there. Yes.
Yeah, all of these things could happen, and then that moment when you have to take yourself out of it and be and none of those things can ever happen because he's gone now, and I've missed the opportunity to make any of those things happen. And so what I was trying so much to do was let the audience feel that feeling that I had when that was cut off. And so I did know that it was maybe a little bit risky. And I can always sort of see, when I get to that part of the show, people are like, oh, great. I'm grab my bag. The show's almost over. A happy ending. Cool. I was no, they're...
Short of an advertised.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, and like you said, not letting it go on too long, because I think if you went a very long time, then people are like, I just invested how much time in this thing that wasn't true, like now I don't like you and I don't trust you.
Investment is a really good word.
Yeah.
Because we are investing in you in the audience. Yes, that's terribly insightful, I think. Has it ever backfired? Or has every audience, as far as you can tell, stayed with you?
As far as I can tell, everybody's stayed with it. And I hope that that's what it does, is it takes them on that journey and then gives that like heart punch that I experienced of like, and it's gone, rewind to the moment where it could have happened, but it didn't.
Yes, the sliding doors moment where the paths have separated, and for good. Not, there are no alternatives.
Yeah.
It's as I say, I can only say it is in its way a little coup de théâtre, I think, because it's unexpected and you succeed against what one might think should happen, which is exactly as you say. The audience would sometimes go, what? I've been lied to, but it's not. It's join me in this fantasy in a way, isn't it? So.
Yeah, and I will say it was a very intentional choice not to make it a song. I feel like maybe it would have been harder for the audience to forgive it or to come back with me if I had like laid it out in a very like beautiful melodic way. So it is spoken intentionally, because I do think that sort of clears the path then to be able to erase it a little bit easier, with like underscoring underneath it. So it like has that feeling of it, but it's not like, I don't know, there's just something about music that I think people would feel more betrayed if it had been musicalized fully.
That's terribly interesting as well. So let's compute that a little bit. So I suppose the idea is that when you're explaining it in dramatic terms rather than a song, you're sort of leading us down an avenue. But, I'm going to some terrible metaphors here, but an avenue has roads off it. And actually you can quite often double back on yourself, which is essentially what you're doing. I suppose a song is automatically more discreet. It's a thing in its own right. It's more like a piece of street furniture. You see what I'm doing here? But it's like a lamppost with a sign on it. It doesn't move. It's immutable. It's the truth.
Yes.
Now that's obviously the simile I'm pushing there, and I suppose that that helps clarify at one level. But actually, I also why does a song lend itself to sincerity more than text? That's terribly interesting.
Yeah, and I don't know that I
have an answer.
Have an answer. I do think that
come back when you have.
I do think there is something about what music does to us inside, and we were talking earlier about how music can like accomplish things that words can't accomplish sometimes. And I think maybe it would have felt very manipulative to like play with like the emotions of what music can do to you as an audience member.
Emotions, yes, of course.
And then find out that like, everything I just experienced was a lie, versus being told a story and then finding out that it was all a lie. I don't know that I'm right about that, but I'd like to push that a little bit further. Then I think it's the investment, actually. Now I'm thinking about it, I think in a song one invests, particularly in a well-written song which is pushing the drama along, because it's doing something as well. It's not just playing on the ear. And I suspect, and I could be wrong here, this could just be nonsense because none of us have had a chance to really think this through, but it seems to me that, when you're, as an audience, you're not overtly, but you're subliminally analysing what you're being told in text. But when you're presented with a song, you have to engage with a song in a slightly different way because there's more going on, and therefore you're absorbing more, but you're also giving more in terms of your own energies, and therefore the investment, just speech marks physically, let alone emotionally and mentally, is greater. And to be betrayed on something you've invested in is more painful than actually here's something that you're being, than the dramatic version, which we spend all our lives analysing. I've just met this person in the street. What they're telling me, is what they're telling me true? Is this man who's just given me a flyer for a lovely show in Edinburgh, who's told me it's the best thing he's ever seen, actually sincere? Right. I just wonder if we respond to things in different ways. Thank you. I might have to go off and have a jolly good ponder about that. Yeah.
You've opened my eyes and my brain, which is also useful. But thank you. That's terribly interesting. But I do think you do it, and you do it deftly. Once again, that's the word I'm going to use. But also, it pays off. As I say, because it's not done gratuitously, it is done for a purpose. It is not done excessively, it's pitched perfectly, and of course it has a dramatic function, which then propels us into, if you like, the last act. Yeah. So, this show has been so very well received. You got an award at the Denver show.
where are you going with this show next? What's the way forward for this show, and what's the way forward for you? And the paths may be overlapping, and the paths may not.
I don't know. I'm excited. We're here for the whole Fringe here in Edinburgh. So excited to get to keep performing it and working on it, and just getting to share it with people, which is really exciting. I've never been here before. Like, what an incredible opportunity and incredible people, and I've just had the most wonderful time.
It's an amazing experience if it's your first time here. It's a big one, the Fringe in Edinburgh.
Oh my gosh, unbelievable. My mind is just like blown all day, every day. And as far as the show, I don't know that we have specific plans for what we want to do with it after this. Hopefully be able to take it to some other fringes and like sort of keep a life going for it.
And you'd like to do that. You'd like to keep this on the road for a bit, because it's still, you're still responding to it yourself as a performer as well as the creator.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So if there was a way to keep it going and keep taking it around or tour it, like that would be really exciting to me. But I also have sort of a whole other facet of my career that is not solo shows. It is writing more traditional plays and musicals and things like that with collaborators back in the States. So I'm one of those writers. I like to be working on like many things simultaneously. So I don't know. I think like one feeds into another also.
So how can people stay in touch with you? Do you mind me asking?
Sure. My website is a good place to sort of see what's going on. It's jennystafford.net.
And how are you spelling Jenny here?
With a Y. Jenny. Good question.
jennystafford.net.
.net.
Lovely, very good choice.
Yeah. I'm also on Instagram and Facebook. Same thing, just under my name. So those are good places to follow my work and what I'm doing.
Splendid. Well, I would strongly recommend that people do, because I've only seen this from your catalogue, as it were, but it's a masterpiece. I mean, it's simply a masterpiece. It's a modest masterpiece, but it's a mini masterpiece. But all those three things in no way diminish the fact that it's a masterpiece. There we are. And Jenny, it's been such a delight talking to you. Thank you so much for your time, but thank you so much more for your insights into your own show, which have really helped illuminate my understanding of it further. And it's a show I love, so it's one of those shows I want to carry on interrogating it mentally, and it's a show I carry with me. So there are some shows that you see and you enjoy and then you forget, and then there are some shows you see and you think, oh, that was marvellous. And when I saw your name in the catalogue, as it were, for this year, live, having seen you virtually last year, I was, that's the first ticket on my list of, my short list of what am I going to see, I'm going to see that. So thank you so much, Jenny. It's been a real joy talking to you.
Awesome. Well, you as well. And thank you so much for your support of the show and your support of artists who create musical theater. It's a hard thing to do, and not everybody gets it. And it's such a joy to talk to someone who really understands how musical theater works and the function of it. And I'm just really grateful to have met you, and grateful for your support of the show and for your podcast and what you're doing for musical theater. So thank you so much.
Very kind. You're far too kind, I might add. But thank you. But at the end of the day, you have done all the work. I'm just a parasite. So, but thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
This is not the kind of thing I'd normally do. This is not the girl I want to be. But if I can change my fate with just a number 2 pencil, then why not take a chance? I mean, let's see, cause this is just step 1 in a longer game. A date for this dance, then a date for prom. If I get those, then maybe I'll avoid the shame of never finding love, so just stay calm. So I fill out the Scantron. Ja-ja-ja-ja-ja, it's reading my answers. Ja-ja-ja-ja-ja, and machines don't make mistakes. Ja-ja-ja-ja-ja, as long as you're precise enough. Ja-ja-ja-ja-ja, and I've got what it takes. The only 2 skills that you need in this case are to color inside the lines and erase. Color inside the lines and erase. You see, if you changed your mind on an answer, you had to erase the old answer really well, or else the Scantron might mark the old answer. Same thing if you weren't neat and you colored outside the lines. If you could color inside the lines and erase, there were no errors with Scantrons. I have made an entire life of coloring inside the lines and erasing. And now it was all going to pay off, because now this Scantron was going to find me love. Maybe I'll get matched with some awesome guy, a friendly guy, a guy from column C. And because we're matched, by insides and not our looks. Maybe he would see me differently. So I fill out the Scantron. Ja, it's reading my answers. Ja, it's peering in my soul. Ja, it's deciding my future. Ja, the machine is in control, making a match with my heart, not my face. If I color inside the lines and erase, color inside the lines and erase. And I look around and wonder who my best match might be. Which of these hot guys will the Scantron pick for me? There's Nick, he's cute. There's nothing between us, but my locker's below his, so I crouch by his penis every day. Sometimes we talk, me and Nick, not his penis. There's Steven, he's sweet. He was nice as we grew up, like that time in 6th grade when I turned and I threw up in his lap. He said, "Oh, let me help you." Then I ran down the hall, still throwing up, all the way down the hall to the bathroom. Still, his first response was, "Let me help you?" That's the kind of guy you want to end up with. Of course, I was so mortified that I hadn't spoken to him since. This has been another episode of Boys That I Erased. But maybe now, this Scantron was going to turn things around. This Scantron was the key to everything. Ja, it's solving world hunger. Ja, it makes peace in the Sudan. Ja, I think it's curing cancer. Ja, it's bringing back my dead gran. Ja, my hopes might be too high. Ja, but it's finding me a man. Ja, it's fixing my whole life. Ja, and it will because it can. It will because it can. It will because it can. The Scantron and I in a perfect embrace as I color inside the lines and erase. Ja, in its love database. If I color inside the lines and erase.
There we are. That song was the title song, Colour Inside the Lines, from the show of the same name, obviously, by Jenny Stafford. And if you want to look it up online, please do. It's spelt with the American spelling of colour, of course, C-O-L-O-R, Inside the Lines, and you can find details about it at jennystafford.net, where you can also find a lot more about Jenny and her amazing portfolio of shows and performances. She is an amazingly talented person, and it was my delight to see her and her show Colour Inside the Lines. Keep an eye out for Jenny Stafford. You won't be disappointed. I certainly wasn't. And I think that brings this episode of Musical Talk to an end. But I will just check. Yes, the piece of paper that I have in front of me, which says bring this episode to an end, pretty much confirms my position on this. I'm not one to argue with a piece of paper. They somehow have authority. Or maybe I just have an incredibly weak will where I can be outwitted by a piece of thinly sliced tree. Whichever way it is, I am going to bring this episode to an end, and I'm going to do it with one simple word. And there's almost no point in me explaining what that word is. If you don't know by now, you never will. But for the sake of tradition, I'm going to say it anyway. Goodbye. This episode of Musical Talk was edited and presented by Thos Ribbits. Copyright Musical Talk 2024, except for the songs where the copyright remains with Jenny. And my thanks goes to her for allowing me to play her songs in this episode. To find out more about the world of Musical Talk and listen to past episodes, go along to our website www.musicaltalk.co.uk or subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts and follow us on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, you can at Musical Talk Thos. It is recording now, but this is just build up. I do it as live, but I edit.
Oh, great.
So if we find that we've got ourselves into a tangle, or you've libelled your friends and family, can we just roll that bit back, and then we'll just start again, and I'll cut that bit out. Also, excessive thinking time with the I take all that out, so everyone looks like a genius.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I love all of this.
Well, I want people to feel comfortable, because it's about having a conversation about your work, and it's not an expose. This isn't going on our 6 o'clock news programme tonight.
Right.
This is
it's not a gotcha.
No, not absolutely. So, if you're happy with that,
it's perfect.
Lovely. I have to ask you. Could I ask you for a very quick level, conversationally? I'm getting used to writing colour without a U. You see. I'm fairly British, as you probably spotted.